Section 7.4, special right triangles. So we're going to learn about two special right triangles and how the sides are related to each other. So first we're going to look at a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times as long as each leg. So my legs are the same. Let's call them x. And then my hypotenuse will be x times the square root of 2. This one is easy to verify with the Pythagorean theorem because you know your two sides are the same. We know that x squared plus x squared equals, we'll just say the hypotenuse squared, c squared. This becomes 2x squared equals c squared, and then we square root both sides. The square root of x squared is x, so it's x times the square root of 2 equals c. You will want to know this exact because these do not want a calculator or a decimal approximation. You have to leave it in terms of square root of 2. So we're going to find the hypotenuse in each of these triangles. Okay, so for this first one, we know this angle is 45 degrees, which means we know this angle is 45 degrees. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So we take the leg of the triangle, which is 12, and we multiply it by the square root of 2. So the hypotenuse is the leg times the square root of 2. So 12 times the square root of 2, and then you're done. Here, we have our two sides, our two legs are congruent, which means it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So our hypotenuse is the length of the leg, which is 10 times the square root of 2, times the square root of 2. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. So this equals 20. So now we're going to find one of the legs in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So remember, our leg times the square root of 2 is equal to our hypotenuse, which means that x has to equal 15. Okay, and our multiple choice, we have triangle MNP is a right triangle. We are given that this angle is 45, which means we know it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And we are given NP is 18 inches, and we want to find the length of MP. So all we're going to do is take that 18 and multiply it by the square root of 2, which is going to be choice D. So the next special right triangles are the 30, 60, 90 triangles. So in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is twice as long as the shorter leg, and the longer leg is the square root of 3 times as long as the shorter leg, which I know sounds more confusing. So if you remember when we talked about the inequalities in a triangle, the shortest side of the triangle is always across from the smallest angle. So which means the shorter leg is this one. So if we call that one x, then our hypotenuse is twice as long as that, 2 times x. And our longer leg, which is the side across from 60, is x times the square root of 3, because it's the square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So so it's a little bit harder to remember. Okay, so we're going to find the height of an equilateral triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an equilateral triangle. Alex has a team logo patch in the shape of an equilateral triangle. If the sides of the patch are 2.5 inches long, what is the approximate height of the patch? So we have to find the height by drawing in our altitude. And if you remember, in an equilateral triangle, the altitude is also the median, the perpendicular bisector, and the angle bisector. So we know that those two angles are the same. We know that those two sides are the same. That's what you're going to need in order to do this. So if this whole angle, if every angle in an equilateral triangle is 60, and this is an angle bisector, then each of these are 30. So we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And since this bisects that side there, and the whole side is 2.5, each of these is 1 1/4. And we want to find our height. So our shorter leg is 1 1/4, and we're going to multiply that, we'll put 1.25 for this, times the square root of 3, because the longer leg, which is h, is the square root of 3 times the shorter leg. Since this is an actual application, it's a patch, we're going to get an approximate answer. So we're going to use our calculator to do 1.25 times the square root of 3, and we get about 2.2 inches. Okay, so find lengths in a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So find the values of A and B. Write your answer in simplest radical form. So the side across from 60 is your 15. So 15 is equal to the shorter leg times the square root of 3. Because that's how we would find the longer leg. So in order to find the shorter leg, we have to set this up and solve it for A. So we're going to divide both sides by the square root of 3. But we can't leave our answer like that because you cannot leave a radical in the denominator. So we have to rationalize. So we're going to multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Because the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. So we got rid of our radical. And our numerator is 15 times the square root of 3. And then we can simplify that, so we get 5 times the square root of 3. Once you know what your shorter leg is, it's easy to find the hypotenuse because the hypotenuse is twice as long. So B is equal to 2 times 5 times the square root of 3, which is 10 times the square root of 3. You can also verify that this is correct by taking your 5 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, and make sure you get 15. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3, and 5 times 3 is 15. So then you would know you did it correct. Okay, so a kite is attached to a 100-foot string as shown in the diagram. How far above the ground is the kite when the string forms the given angle? So this is angle 1. So when measure of angle 1 is 45, and when measure of angle 1 is 30. And we want to find the height. So when measure of angle 1 is 45, then we know that 100 is equal to the side of the length of the leg times the square root of 2. And now we have to solve this for h. So we're going to divide both sides by the square root of 2. And again, we have to rationalize because we can't leave the radical in the denominator. So we have to multiply by what the denominator is, because square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. And then 100 times the square root of 2. And then 100 divided by 2 is 50. So it's 50 times the square root of 2. Since that's a real world example, we want to go ahead and figure out what 50 times the square root of 2 is. And that is approximately 70.71 feet. So that's this one here. So when the measure of angle 1 is 30, we know that the hypotenuse is twice as long as the shorter leg. Because if this is 30, this is the shorter leg. So this one's actually easier because we know that h is equal, we know that 2 times h is equal to 100. So h is equal to 50. So this one is just 50 feet.